On today's episode, we have Gabe Wight from Northwest Arkansas. Gabe shares his journey from running several hundred cows to intentionally downsizing to a more profitable and manageable herd. We discuss about balancing farm life with a career off the farm and how simplifying his operation improved both profitability and quality of life. You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast because what happens in that pasture matters more than most people think. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. Calling all ranchers, if you're looking for a better way to optimize your grazing operation and rev up your bottom line, Noble Research Institute can help. Noble's team of ranch managers and researchers work together to find solutions to your challenges. They don't just give you the answers. They help you understand how to apply the research-tested and field-proven principles on your ranch. Visit noble.org and click the Find a Course button for information about online and in-person educational courses near you. For 10 seconds about the farm, it is amazing how fast fescue can go to seed, even when you think you have it just where you want it. For 10 seconds about the podcast, we had a great Zoom last night for insiders. If you'd like to be part of it next month, visit the Grazing Grass website. Gabe, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. To get started today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to meet you and get to spend a little time together. So my name's Gabe Wight in Northwest Arkansas. And so I know you got listeners all over, and anyone who hasn't been through Northwest Arkansas, we've got a couple of characteristics that are pretty handy. We have plenty of water. We have 4 seasons. We also have a lot of ticks and quite a few snakes. And so you can't have everything.
A lot of rocks for the snakes to hide under.
We prefer growing rocks to grass. And so we have to have those cows with really good teeth. But yeah, plenty of rocks, and it'll hold a fence post once you get it in. The issue is getting it in. So I've got today. I'm just probably a somewhat average sized producer. I've got 40 mama cows. That's changed dramatically over the years, but I've got 40 mama cows, all Black Angus cross. So they're mostly Sim-Angus, a little bit of Gelbvieh influence. I've always been what we call them flashlight farmer. And I know farmer typically means more crop and rancher, but we've always called them flashlight farmer because you get the alliteration of 2 F's in there. And always worked off the farm, had cows, and the 40 has just become a number for me that's super easy to manage, and also is enough to go out and play and have things, but still, pretty easy to manage. On our place, even though I am a flashlight farmer, I do have an expectation of driving profit. And so when I go out and play, that doesn't mean it's just a hobby farm. It is, I expect to drive profit off of what we have and long-term value on the balance sheet.
And I think you mentioned earlier that 40 head has not been your long history with cattle.
That's right. Yeah, I grew up on a small cow calf where we ran anywhere from 15 to 30 mama cows, and my father grew up on a small cow calf. We just have cow calf back to probably Noah, Moses, Adam.
And were they always Black Angus?
No, they were when I was growing up, it was a bit of a motley crew. We had tried to get a little bit of milk cow influence in. And so we always had a little bit of a kind of either a brown Swiss or Holstein, just a small influence, and Hereford bulls for a while, Beefmaster for a little while, and then picked the cows based on, really either we didn't hold back a lot of heifers because we were too small to really manage well the, sire heifer thing, but we picked our replacements based on body conformation and it's amazing at the time. I think our cows are probably 900 to 1,000 pounds. And now they're, 2 Mack trucks and a M1 tank running. I mean, it's unbelievable what's happened now. And back then you really were looking at cattle from a very different place. So anyway, grew up on that. went to college at the University of Arkansas. If you're not a Razorback fan, you should be. And you can be forgiven, but you should still convert over to a Razorback fan. And when I finished school, I wanted to run cows. I love cows. I love dogs. I love cows. Pretty simple. And so I started trying to, worked in an ad agency, started trying to, buy land. I didn't have any money to buy anything. So I started buying back to tax land and flipping it, and finally worked into, a few acres that were cleared. I'd put a couple cows on when I could afford a couple cows and sell that and try to buy maybe a few more acres, and eventually worked in and worked to where I had several hundred mama cows at one time, and had some leased places and that sort of thing. And then, life changes. My first wife passed away of breast cancer, unfortunately, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, thank you. It was terrible.
Oh,
And I'm remarried now to a wonderful lady named Pamela. And when we got married, she said, "Hey, wait a minute, you've got to simplify. You've got to slow down a little bit." And so we started downsizing, let go of the leased places. And now we just run cows on our grass. And then my parents have been retired for, forever. And I run cows on some of their grass as well. And 40 is a great number for us as we stand today.
So was the whole catalyst for reducing that cow numbers Pamela saying, "Hey,
Yeah, pretty much.
too many irons"?
Yeah, she's a city girl. What I'm doing with a city girl, I'll never know. Or actually, that's not true. I know what she's doing with me. We'll never know.
Say less, because my wife's from Hawaii. She didn't know what she was signed up for moving here and having animals.
Yeah, right. And culture shock. You know what it is, what it's like to marry someone and bring them into culture shock, and that's what happened here. And she's just been great. But she was right. When you look at what are our individual interests and then our shared interests, the farm was clearly, it was just an individual interest and something that the kids and I we loved. And she very gracious, like, "Hey, you should still do that. There's no question, but that shouldn't be the consuming thing." And she was very right about that. And I think at the time we were, when we got married, I think we'd already started to kind of downsize in anticipation. But I think we were still running cattle on, here where I am, it's about depending on your land, 3 to 4 acres per cow and per mama cow. And we're still running cattle on, I think about 1,200 acres, 1,250, somewhere in there. So we had to, you're able to run a few animals there.
What did you, when you were running those higher numbers, what did your grazing management look at that time?
It was terrible. That's not true. It wasn't terrible. But I started with, there really, when I was a kid, our place was separated by an old county road. And that forced us to rotational graze a little bit. But it was like moving above the road, moving below the road, that kind of thing.
Right, yes.
Sort of thing. It wasn't a strategy on how on animal husbandry. And then, when I started running cattle, I still really didn't understand. I didn't understand that. I'd never visually seen the benefits of really, great grazing practices. And so it's been a lifelong journey. I'm still on the lifelong journey of how do I best, graze? How do I best manage my grass? How do I best manage cows' grass and make sure that my heifers are 2 fences away from my bulls and all the things that, that you go through when you're, but when I was running a lot, fortunately I did have places where I could move cows around. And one of the larger pieces that I had leased had very, very poor fences, unfortunately, but it did have enough where you could, and as any place does, it's always interesting to me how in our area the grass grows, even if it's you'd have your warm season Bermuda, maybe your cool season fescue, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Fescue in some pastures can hold, it's much, much more durable, much better, root, soil quality, all that. And so it takes a while to figure out, like, I've got ground. What do I really have here? And how do I best use that ground in a way that promotes animal health, promotes forage health, promotes a longevity of grazing? And it took a long time I had acquired so quickly, it took a long time to figure out how do I best manage the rotation, because one fescue field, 30 acres in fescue over here isn't the same as 30 acres in fescue over there. And that's something that I think only 10 for me, only time and experience, helps with. So I hope that answers your question somewhat. If it didn't,
that's great. And then you start reducing your cow herd.
Yep.
And you've got about 40 cows.
Mm-hmm.
How did having that smaller number change in grazing management?
It really changed everything. When I started reducing, I was overstocked. And I think when I got into cattle, I think the overall attitude was pretty much, what will your place hold? Let's add 10% and then go from there.
I think that's still common.
Yeah.
Quite a few people around me do that still yet.
Yeah. And so you end up, you feed hay for longer than you should, but you don't really count the dollars and cents behind what you're doing, and you don't count it in health costs because it's baked into the cake. You can't, if you're managing, however you're managing, you don't know what would have been. And that's one of the great maybe blessings in life, is you never know what would have been, but it's also one of the great curses where you can't project out a test and a control scenario. But moving from a lot to a few, it really made me take a very, very fine point focus. And the benefit was I had a lot, and I was selling them off in tranches, but I was moving them faster than I was selling them off. So I was really overstocked for the first year of that. And then, working through those and culling out and everything, getting to what is the right number. And so when you look at like where I am, my places right now, by math, I should be running probably about 60 mama cows, and I could. And I sat at that 60 to 65 or so for 2, 3, 4 years. And then I thought, I'm going to trim this back a little bit and see what happens. And my management was so much easier. Already I could see a difference. The health, especially my calf health was better. They just had better body conformation. They had put on more flesh. They had fewer flies, explain some of those things, all that. And so I kept trimming back a little bit. And my goal became, I want to get to where I'm feeding hay 30 days a year and just see what that's like, and then either build up or contract from that. And so this year, under 30 days, I think I'm at a good number. I may add 2 or 3 mamas, but I'm within 10% of where I would love to be. And what's happened from a grazing perspective is I remember going out, jumping on a horse or 4-wheeler like daily. Can I get another day out of this paddock? Can I get another day? Can I get 2 more days? I watched the weather it was unbelievable. I'd sit there, is a 21% chance of rain. I'd be like, we've got to get this rain right now.
We need it to hit.
21 needs to be a 21% chance. And I still worry about drought. But I'm not in a place where I have to load up a load and take them off. And I've done it many times. I've got to get them off right now. And the problem is, you get them off right now, you've already waited too long.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
So and now I've got the luxury of it. I want to be managing my bottom line. One of the things when I got into cows, there's nothing to me prettier than a black cow out of a green pasture. Put a spring green pasture out there, spring green, lush black cow. I think that's the most beautiful thing ever. And I wanted the best looking animals ever. And I started, you buy these, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm losing money like crazy. I'm spending too much on my animals. I'm spending too much trying to make things look good instead of produce. And there's a real difference.
Right. There is.
Yeah. And so now I look at, and now I care about taking good care of things, but, and what that does, it improves the bottom line. And my bottom line shows it. Fewer animals has been a benefit to the bottom line, and it is a benefit to the bottom line. My equipment lasts, when you're only feeding 30 days versus, 4 or 5, 6 months, you don't put hours on your equipment. You don't run, diesel through all things. Yeah. So my grazing practices changed a lot. Additionally, I've really tried to get focused in on pasture health. I do not want to spray. I do, but not everything anymore. And so I've got like this year, I sprayed one of my hay fields. It just was becoming thistly, and which is, you're working through it. But I've got so much clover that's come back around. I do not want to spray, and so much of that is just because I overgrazed for how long, and now I'm still trying to work through the consequences of that.
And it takes a long time to recover from an overgrazing event. A lot longer than you think it would.
It really does. It really does. And I've been experimenting last years with different types of fertilizer and what that kind of rotation looks like of on what I do need to fertilize, what I don't need to fertilize, trying to manage that better. And then what I use. So like this year, last year, I tested in a couple of pastures the dried human waste. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had great success with it. And so I've been trying to be very strategic. Again, bottom line, and fertilizer is like, you might as well sell both my arms right now to try to pay for it. And so I try to be pretty choiceful in where I fertilize and how I do that. And go back to the spray. If you've got, for us, we've got a good clover, we're going to have better grass and not need as much fertilizer. So,
right. Yeah.
Just all kind of, it's a system. And overgrazing is just absolutely takes the foundation out of that system, and you try to patch it with this little thing and that little thing, but it's systemic. And that this little thing, that little thing doesn't quite compensate for it.
Right. You're treating a symptom rather than the cause of it. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
With your fertilizing, you're located with a few chicken houses around you. Are you utilizing chicken litter?
Yeah, I do. I've utilized a lot of chicken litter in the past. Let's see, it's been probably 4 years since I've used chicken litter. Chicken litter is great. I have a suspicion some of my thistle-ish problems have come from chicken litter. I don't know if that's true or not, but
yes.
I have a suspicion that some of that's passing through. And chicken litter is great. It is. We're on. We don't have water issue here, but we do have water quality issues between Oklahoma and Arkansas. And one of the hypotheses is that we've over fertilized, over chicken litter, and we've got runoff happening into the watersheds and all that. So anyway, chicken litter is a little bit harder to come by. And then a couple of the farms where I used to get it, they've stopped raising birds. So I haven't. Actually, I said I did one pasture in chicken litter this year. A lot of times people call us, "Hey, we got a few loads left over. Do you want to buy them?" Yeah, I'll take a load or two or whatever, and opportunistic.
Right. I always tell people chicken litter makes rocks grow grass.
Well, it is unbelievable. The commercial fertilizer, which I've used a lot of it, but it doesn't build your soil base.
Right.
It doesn't have the same kind of residual, and it is so. I live. We've got 110 acres where my house is, and it was all in trees when I bought it, and so I cleared the trees, logged it, cleared the trees, and then had the advantage of it. The disadvantage of it didn't have fences, and then the advantage of it didn't have fences, so I could plant the fences and water and all of that with rotational grazing in mind. And you don't, most of the time you don't come into that kind of a situation where you can start fresh.
Right.
And part of that start fresh was there was no grass. And so I used chicken litter a lot those early years. It just builds the foundation of the soil so well. I'm a fan of chicken litter. And I'm also, I like this. Here's the thing. Get whatever you use, make sure it's tested. That's and so many people, it's like you call your fertilizer guy here, gentleman named Johnny. He's amazing and he's so smart. He's so good. But you're like, "Hey, Johnny, I need fertilizer. What do you need?" "I'm not sure, Johnny. What would you do?" Which, how many times does he get that call every day instead of, "Let's take some soil in, let's get it tested. Tested, and let's actually be strategic about this."
Yeah. Your management, how you're managing your rotational grazing and what it looks like.
Sure. So my place where I live, as I mentioned, we were able to set the pastures where it's ready made for rotational grazing. We do a really good job of rotational grazing here. For us, our grass growing seasons, we get a good, nice little cool season in the fall. We get a nice spring grass growth. And so I keep typically very few animals here through the winter. And I have a heavy balance of warm season grasses. So this week or next week, I'll start moving cattle here off of what are primarily cool season places. And I'll bring them here and house them for the summer. And really the thing is when the, first frost hits and that Bermuda goes dormant, then I'll be probably within a couple of weeks hauling them off to where cool season. So being understocked, what it's allowed me to do, I don't have to cut as much hay, so I can stockpile a lot more grass. And where I used to be at a place where I might start feeding hay, on maybe drier years, October 15, November 1st, but I'm always feeding hay come December 1. This year I didn't start feeding hay till almost February.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just great. So I'm able to stockpile hay. And then my parents, they're retired. They don't want to mess with cows anymore. And so they let me, they've got about, 20 or so acres of pasture that I take cows out there to graze this summer. And so I try to keep where I'm going to winter the cows, try to keep it stockpiled for winter. And here's why I feed hay there. Because you could choose it about anywhere, but right. I want, while the grass is growing, I want to be able to rotate around very well. The stockpile, I'll use hay as a supplement to pull them into the different areas to be able to graze. So they may only eat, a third of their or 20% of their daily diet in hay, but they've got to get to the hay. So that place where I usually winter them, it's also about 110 acres or so, and but it's divided up into two larger pastures, and the way the water works on it's just a disaster to try to do high quality rotational grazing on it. So I try to use my winter feeding to kind of mock the rotational grazing and make sure they're eating that stockpile forage really well. So I don't have the luxury of being able to run like hot wire and keeping them because it got such limited water on it. But that's kind of what I do. I think in terms of rotational, not necessarily limited paddock for a week at a time, but rotational graze, rest. In an application, it happens differently, one with fences and one with more or less feeding patterns to try to, mimic that rotational piece.
Right, yeah. With your home place, you basically had a blank canvas to go from.
Blank canvas, yeah.
When you start thinking about fences and designing for rotation there, were you limited by water locations? Did you have a certain system in mind that you did, like a wagon wheel, or favor square paddocks, or how did you go about that design process?
Yeah. The problem when you have a blank canvas is you can draw where your fences are going to go, but about the 1,000th post you're driving in, you think, what have I done here?
Right. The I can't even say the word, topography on a paper is different than it's
very
out
different.
in the pasture.
Right. Yeah, it's when I think I'm probably like, my 350 a 3-foot hole to sink a corner post or an H brace in the Arkansas rocky ground. And I'm thinking, I'm such an idiot. But on the waterfront, where my house is, we're a limestone base, and so ponds are not. I have one, but it was already here. It's an older pond. It holds water really well. But because of the way the land lays, pond just wasn't, I didn't feel like I could get the paddock size and location with pond location. And of course, that's how we typically, waters pond location. Yeah. I've got, we've got some springs on the place, but I did not tap into those. I ended up doing rural water because of that. I ran water lines and could put waterers where I wanted, where I needed. It is interesting. It's just like, it's like anything else. You do it and you're like, wish I'd done a few things differently.
Well, yeah, hindsight's always 20/20.
But I'm not about to go pull those posts and
no. You had to go through enough rock, they're going to stay there.
That's right. But I did do some things. I'm not sure is the right idea or not, but I really thought about, summers here are our issue. We're not, sitting up in the next to the Canadian border. It's summers here, just, similar to Oklahoma, Texas, whatever. And so water, I tried to place water whether it's right or wrong, I was thinking about how do I get the cattle to graze the entire pasture instead of standing in a pond or standing in shade and licking dirt and rocks in a 50-yard radius. And so I tried to place water, think about, from a summer perspective, where are the cattle going to gather to stay cool? And then how do I pull them across to get the water so that they kind of have to at least walk around and stare at grass. And that I've been really, really pleased at how evenly my pastures are grazed. Really pleased. They're just, I just don't have, here, I don't have hot spots. Now, my other place where I've got just, a pond per pasture, these 40-acre pastures, right. I mean, it'll be, they're licking sand. And then over there, it's like, up to your waist.
Oh, yeah.
Because they just they're going to stand in the pond all day. There's shade around the pond. They're going to stand in the pond, stand in the shade. They're going to go eat they're not dummies. We're the dummies for putting the pond and the shade together. And so,
right. Yeah.
Anyway, but I've been really pleased and it's made a massive difference in just evenness of grazing. And I would do that again.
Now, you did mention something there, about hindsight, some of your fence you wouldn't have had there. You might have moved your water. If you were doing it again, how would you have changed it?
Yeah. There are a couple things specifically I would have done. Number one, smaller paddocks. No brainer. Smaller paddocks. Right now I've got roughly 15-acre paddocks, which is great. But when you're running 40, I wish I'd have cut those in half. And if I was smart, that sounds like a whole lot more posts and barbed wire. And it's a little bit more. But it really isn't that much with just a little bit. Once you start driving and walking across it, you realize, oh, I've already had to put an H brace here because it, crests or whatever. If I'd have just run off of this, could have cut it in half, that sort of thing. So that's one thing I wish I'd have done is smaller paddocks. And that would have made a nice difference in my life. That's one thing. The second thing I wish I would have done is when I placed the waterers, I did not think about how much erosion would happen around the waters on a hillside.
Oh, yeah.
So I tried to put the waterers where it was, like I've got a couple where it's nice and just flat, and those things they've been amazing. They're great. And I've got the one that's the most on kind of a hillside. It's eroded out from under it. They've broken off the concrete. And so I've had to build that up and redo the pad for it. The pad was, again, hindsight, the pad was too small for the hillside that it was on.
Oh, yeah.
And I wish I would have asked some advice, more advice on, okay, how do you really think about, because if I would have moved it literally 30 yards would have made all the difference.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's like everything else. It's a game of inches. We're playing a game of inches. And that's one thing I really would have done as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing that erosion, even just putting a gate kind of on a little bit of a slope. Yeah. Of course, you deal with much greater slopes than I do being in Northwest Arkansas. Right. And you've only got so many flat places to work with.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even just a gate opening on a little bit of slope has so much more erosion than you think it would.
It does. And those are some things I really wish I'd have thought about differently. And then I also placed, I've got one main hay barn here. I placed it where, again, hindsight, I kind of wish I wouldn't have. Oh, I know another thing. Actually, Cal, another thing, I had the luxury of clearing what I wanted to clear and not clearing what I wanted to clear. And I told the guy on the dozer, I said, hey, if you think I can get it across with a tractor and a brush hog, clear it. Terrible mistake. Guy, I can get across with a tractor and a brush hog. But what happened is I've got areas where the soil is so poor. It just will only grow weeds. It's so poor. It's really kind of iffy on a tractor. I won't let my son ride with me when I'm brush hogging it. You can do it. Say it's the best thing ever, but you could do it. And I wish I would have left more cover in some of those. And I got too aggressive. And I think, this goes back to that old philosophy of my normal stock rate, increase that by 10% and grow from there. It's the same kind of mentality. And I just wish I would have tried to extract. I guess that's it. You try to extract everything out of it.
Right. You try and get every foot you can.
That's right.
Yeah.
Instead of how do I responsibly work with what I have? And so, and you look at these. I don't know why I would care that my neighbor can run X number of cows on Y number of acres. That's so irrelevant. I mean, it's interesting, but his place isn't my place. And but we get caught up in this, or why I would care that my other neighbor buys these bulls that look like freaking Greek gods, and it's amazing. But that's not I'm not running my race. My race is my race, and I like getting that input. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to sort through, like, I've got a bottom line. All I care about is my bottom line and a quality of life, and there we go.
Well, right. That goes back to that saying, however it goes, comparisons awful. The only comparison you should be doing is where were you yesterday or 5 years ago. At Redmond, we know that you thrive when your animals do. That's why it's essential to fill the gaps in your herd's nutrition with the minerals that they need. Made by nature, our ancient mineral salt and conditioner clay are the catalyst in optimizing the nutrients your animals get from their forage. Unaltered and unrefined, our minerals have the natural balance and proportion that your animals prefer. This gives your herd the ability to naturally regulate their mineral consumption as they graze. Our minerals won't just help you improve the health of your animals, but will also help you naturally build soil fertility so you can grow more nutrient-dense pasture year after year. Nourish your animals, your soil, and your life with Redmond. Learn more at redmondagriculture.com. And that's really tough, to be honest, because we look out, we're dealing with, or we have more moderate-sized cows. Mm-hmm. And of course, across the fence, if their bull gets in on us, and it's happened, his bulls are giants compared to our neighbor used to be. We're giants compared to what we were running. But that's his philosophy, and we have ours. Yeah.
Well, and you're exactly right on comparison. I think the comparison only leads to a life of complaining.
Yes.
And your option, I think I've kind of come in my own mind to sort out that I have an option. I can either compare or I can be grateful. That's it. Mm-hmm. There really isn't a lot. There aren't a lot of other options from a mentality perspective. And on that note about your neighbor's bull, I have a hypothesis. My cows are too big. I think I'm managing incorrectly. So from what looks good is I like to pull my sale report up.
Oh, yeah.
Look at these yearlings. And they were huge. How big were yours? And I don't know why I care about that. What I care about is I've got so many pounds of mothers. I've got so many pounds of offspring that my place will hold. I really care about what the ratio is, what percent is my weaning weight, what percent. And so I think in a lot of times in my life, I have worked toward the wrong objective, or maybe not bad objectives. Having a big weaned calf it's great. And maybe that is the best math, but it's not the math that leads to maximizing profitability. The math that leads to there are better things to look at that can get us to better profitability. That's the last few years what I've really tried to focus in on is how do I get into a better profitability position. And sometimes that means going and buying that new tractor because it is because the depreciation schedule or whatever. Sometimes it means running the old stock trailer because there isn't and not worrying about or running bigger cows or running smaller cows, but just kind of trying to figure out, for me, how do I get the most profitability out of my place that can and be a great steward of the land, the animals, my family as we do it.
As you go through that process, how are you identifying those areas that you could do different that might improve your profitability?
Yeah. Okay. I'm by nature, a super curious person. I'm a consumer of literature like crazy. I podcast literature, so I read a lot, but not only as it relates to, I feel like a cross domain or a well-rounded mindset helps you be more creative, because some of these things are, just, you have to be imaginative, or you have to be creative to come up with, well, what would I do differently? And the second thing is, I have no issue asking questions. And so I'll sit down at the feed store, which is kind of my place. I'll go down to Powell Feed and Milling, and I'll sit down there in one of their old chairs, and these guys will come in that I've seen, my whole life coming in. I'll just ask them questions. And have you dealt with this? Have you seen this? Or how do you think about this? And, some of them you'll ask, you'll say, I will name names, but it's like, how many cows you have? Oh, I don't have any idea. What do you mean you have no idea? I guess the ones that are alive, they're still mine. What do you mean?
Yeah.
How many? They're just out there. I load them up once a year when it's time to take the calves in the market. I haven't counted them in years, and you're thinking, well, that's one way of doing it.
That's a low stress way, so that you don't have to get worried wrapped up in your numbers.
That's right. So you get those kinds of things, but you also get like, I was actually the weight ratio. I was talking to one of the guys that works for the state, and he, goes around and does the bangs vaccination. And I was talking to him one time, and I said, hey, let me ask you something. You got all these farms. Who does it well? Like, who do you look at and you say, you know what, they've got a good way of thinking about this, about anything? Like, what ideas do you just respect that you hear? And he starts kind of going through, here's some people and ideas. So I think that's also another, and you're facilitating that on this show, of bringing people in that have ideas, and for your listeners, they've got to sort through, like, okay, that's interesting, or that actually might improve my program. I want to run my race, but I want to run it really, really well, and that may fit into the race I'm running and help me run it better, or that's just, not going to work for me, which is fine too.
But I do want to stress to my listeners, they need to listen to every minute, just so
every minute. Oh my goodness. Because the gold nuggets could slip through if you miss even just a second. Yeah, that's right.
Right. And, I wish I could say that about other podcasts I listen to every minute, but I don't. I kind of skim and pick out what's good for me. So I understand listening habits.
Right. That's right. That's right.
With your changes over the few years, and you've talked about you're looking at profitability, and you're thinking about, are my cows driving my profitability? Am I doing a good job there? Have you made any changes to their breeding? Are you looking at evaluating anything else you would change? Or are you happy with the direction you are?
Happy with the direction I am, but I wish I was in a different direction today. And so, one of the things you can't, if you can, I don't know about it. You can't change your direction overnight. It takes a while to work genetically.
It does, yeah.
Cow. So here, I sold 5.5 weights. And so I might pull them off the cow. I might wean them. I might work them once. I might wean them for 30 days, 45 days. And I sold 5 weights, 5.5 weights. That was kind of my spot that was in there. And a lot of that was because I was overstocked to the degree that I couldn't do anything different. So everything I was looking at, how do I get 5 weights the fastest? If they fall off a cliff and don't grow another pound, that's on the guy downstream of me, but I need to get to 5 weights. And then I started to run the math, and it was becoming very apparent that no, there's actually more money to be made if I hold them to a 7 weight. And so I sell roughly 7 weights right now. Now, today, that's not a good strategy, but it has been for the last, few years, it's been a good strategy. So I'll wean them off, work them twice, and put them into a program. So I sell a lot through Joplin Regional Stockyards. I've got really nice programs up there. They do a great job. Purina has a good program. And I always would end up with, I've got so few now, it's easy to manage, but back in the day, I'd end up with, you got a couple of trailer loads, you got pot loads or whatever, and you got a few stragglers or whatever. And you just, so I had the chance of, trying different strategies or different barns and not programming or programming. And it just always made about a 5 to 20 cents a pound difference. And, on a 700 pound calf, that's significant, but genetic wise, now, if it takes a little longer to get to 5 weight, I don't care. I just need to get to a 7 weight the fastest. Really, it changes the way that I've been thinking about. Another advantage is if I want to keep some of my own heifers, I can watch those heifers develop a little bit longer. And as we both know, some will be born in the early stage. They'll look like they're going to be very promising, but they just won't develop as well as others and so it gives me a little bit longer time to see how those heifers are going to develop and all that. So yeah, I've changed quite a bit. I've also changed where I sell. There are so many great places to sell. And I've done just about all the strategies out there. Today I'm not big enough to send a pot load to feed yard and follow them through the rail, that sort of thing. I've got some friends that we've talked about, pooling together and doing it. But pretty much the last, 5-6 years, I've pretty much taken them up to Joplin and been very, very pleased with that. Yep. And a lot of that's because of the programs they do. If they didn't do the programs, they're far enough away from me where I'm really happy. There's a sale barn in Siloam Springs that they do a really good job as well, but they don't have the same program. So that's
yeah. Are you raising your own replacements?
I haven't been used to. Then I was like, these heifers are terrible. And I went through a phase of like buying pot loads of heifers and, AIing them and selling them back in, like 12, 13, 14. That was a great business to be in, except that pot loads of heifers are like the worst kind of teenagers. They're really, really nice. And then all of a sudden one of them goes crazy and it's unbelievable. And I'm too old for that.
Right. Yeah.
And then I stopped. I started traveling a fair amount with work and not being around. So I stopped raising my own heifers and started buying 3 to 6 year olds. And then, actually I've got some heifers that are, they're going to be calving this fall. And that's the first round of heifers I've kept in a long time. I've kept a couple here and there that they come out and you're like, oh, I really like her. And I'll kind of know where the bull program is. I think it's harder to keep your own replacements. If you're small like me, because you don't have the luxury of mixing your genetics the same. So I have to really think about what bulls are going to be in which pasture and how does that work and all that. When I had a lot more, it was a lot easier to keep my own heifers because of the, just the breeding rotation and it just gives you more flexibility. And so that's one of the things I've thought a lot about is, maybe being able to connect. How would we as producers kind of connect where the reality is I've got the same heifers I've got a good friend. We have the same genetics, same cows. We really should just be trading replacements.
Oh yeah.
But we don't. But it'd be super. We know where they come from. We know whose they were. We know we have the same genetic backgrounding for the most part. We know how each other raise, treats, and what kind of animals are the others. And we should be doing that, but we don't. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that kind of thinking in agriculture today. It is so difficult to go to a sale and, pay the money you have to pay and not know what you're getting. I picked a horror story. I picked up this load of heifers in another state, shipped them in, and used them, calved out the first calf, and then I bet half of them had yonis.
Oh man,
it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's so, you just don't. You really don't know, and there are a lot of great producers out there,
right?
Great. So nothing, but I know my neighbors,
right?
I know my friends, I know my family, and the reality is there are a lot of people I just don't know, and they're so you're, even though I love the industry we're in, the odds of finding someone, but that guy didn't know he had yonis, and he sold them to me. He didn't know that they're going to, right. It's just one of those things. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that'll mess you up for a while.
Oh, it will. Yeah. Well, one thing you mentioned on bulls and keeping replacements. Yeah. How long are you holding on to a bull or replacing bulls?
Yeah, man. Oh, I used to be really good at this, of rotating them out and just keeping them for a couple breeding seasons. But I had a good, I had a great source and great customers on the back end. So I'd run them for a couple seasons. And then I'd sell them as still commercial bulls on the and today I I really want to get rid of that bull. Boy, if he's getting, I've got one, this is embarrassing, but I just like, his name's Honey Bun. You'd tell somebody named Honey Bun. He's going on 8. He needs to go. But I'm trying to get, now I think my sweet spot's going to be about 4 seasons out of 1. And I've got run a couple bulls. I'm going to be just fine with that. And I'm not, but if I start keeping my heifers, that'll have to change.
Right. Keeping replacements changes that paradigm with bulls and how long you can keep them.
That's right. In our area, we have good genetics for bulls. I'm in a little bit different program than some of these. We've got a really good registered, lines here, or pretty good registered lines here. But I do like a hybrid. I like that hybrid bigger. And for us, it's you mentioned the rocks. It's all about feet. So we can get. I've had a lot of, and their feet just fall out from under them because they're off of that soft ground and coming out of sand hills or something, and it's like they just can't hold up. And so I'm looking for I want dinner plates on the end of their legs.
Yes, yeah. With you mentioned hybrids or composites or something. What breeds are you leaning towards for bringing in? I know you mentioned your cow herd.
Yep.
Sim Angus, a little Gelbvieh influence.
Yep. I really like the combination of those 3.
Yeah,
really do. I really like that. I plan to stick pretty tight to that. I'm not a straight up, hey, I got to have a balancer, or I've got, I'm a little bit more, let's look at some body conformation, not worry about exactly the genetic makeup, but obviously cows have got to have a good udder. They've got to have a good structure, right? The bulls, and I really want, like everybody else, you want that nice long rib cage, that wide back, all this in the bull. But also, I just find I have better success with a big butted bull. And there's a lot of Angus out there that they just don't have the rump on them. And Angus cross that just don't have the rump on them. And I just do better with the bulls that have a big old rump on them. I've just noticed over time, they just perform better over time. The calves, they're just better. Yeah. So
works out better for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So but I'll stick within those, that Sim Angus Gelbvieh kind of arena for the foreseeable future. One of the things I used to be very picky about, only running black, and for no reason other than only running black. And then back to that, beautiful thing on pasture.
Right.
And then 2 major variations for that. One time I've got a friend who raises really nice Charolais bulls, and he called me and he said, you need a Charolais. And I had a few hundred mama cows and all these black bulls. He said, you need a Charolais bull. I said, I've got all black cows. I don't need a Charolais bull. So I've got it's going to end up being the number 1 Charolais bull in America next year. The Charolais Associate, they've already told me it's going to be, like, it's not number 1. Yeah. He said, you need one of his progeny. And I said, I don't need one. Anyway, I said, you know what? Here's the deal. I've got this place. I'm going to throw 6 bulls out. I'll just work him in and we'll see what those calves look like. So I go pick this guy up on a Friday, bring him home. He gets right in front of my house, gets in a fight with one of my other bulls, ruptures his Achilles.
Oh, no.
So bought him on Friday. He's dead the next Friday. So that was and then, but now, go to the color thing. My, that Simmental, I'll get some, red calves, maybe a little gray calf here and there, but mostly.
Yeah.
And, so my wife, when she goes and checks me, she'll every time, oh, look at that beautiful tan red, but look at that beautiful tan calf. And so really one of the main reasons I started keeping replacement heifers is for her. I started keeping some of the red.
Oh, yes.
Out. And so we've got, I don't know. I think I mentioned like this will be my first round calving out our own heifers in a long time, but 2 of them are red.
Yeah. Well, color's a whole new topic, or a whole different topic. You can go a long ways on there.
How many generations have we all done the same things?
Yes.
Let's move this way. Let's move back that way. Let's try something a little different.
Yeah. The pendulum is always swinging.
Yes.
And at some points it's way on the edge. Some points it's more towards the center, but it's always moving.
Yes. It is. You're exactly right. And it kind of tells you 2 things. Number 1 is we haven't figured it out yet. And I think that's good, because if somebody figures it out, I'm going to be out of business immediately. Number two, we're kind of in the range of reason of figuring it out. We just haven't, fully sorted through like this is the thing to do. And so, yeah, it kind of tells you both those things at the same time.
Yeah, I like to tell people maybe one day we'll get it figured out. Of course, when you start counting your years and decades, you're like, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious for you. I mean, you've been doing this podcast, a couple hundred episodes or so, and kind of finish up a little bit about my some of my grazing. But I'm curious to learn from you a little bit. I'd love to hear on your place, like what are you doing right now that's different than maybe you were doing before episode 10 or before episode 1? How's this informed your management?
For my dad's herd. So we have my herd, we have my dad's herd. For dad's herd, we have permanent paddocks and we're rotating them through. The change that's happened for them is I'm more conscious how long I'm in each paddock and trying to, as Tom Kravik say, respect that graze period and the rest period. So I'm trying to do a better job of that.
Yeah.
What it means for my own herd is I try and do daily rotations. Yeah. And my own herd's been on a roller coaster, quite an adventure. I worked off the farm. Now I'm totally on the farm, but to maintain our living level, I've had to sell assets, which those assets are my cows.
Yeah.
And so my herd is super small right now, which I'm hoping we start back up the hill pretty soon, but I'm not as worried about daily rotation. But if I had more head, I would definitely be doing daily rotations with them. And they're all running on leased land. I'm using poly wire. Trying to think what else has really changed. Just being more aware of, I feel in my own journey, I've moved from managing the cows to get the most grass growth to looking at my grass and my soil and what is going on there. And the cows are the tool. And I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said the livestock's the tool.
Yeah.
But I don't think I really internalized that more till started talking to people about what they're doing on their operation and how they're getting there. We did have hair sheep before I started the podcast, but we've continued down that path and really like what they're doing. They don't get as managed grazing as much as I would like because our fences are not good enough for them, and I don't have them trained to a single poly wire or just a couple. In fact, I had someone asking me earlier, do you have those trained? I don't have them trained. I really need to work on that.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I think anytime the output is where the dollars show up.
Right.
You end up with these calves that you sell or the sheep that you sell, and the output is where the dollars show up. So it's really, really, really easy to focus on the output and look at, because that's such a direct and connection to dollars. But I think that's really your story is a lot of my story of as I've gotten a little older, I've realized that the output is the end of the chain. And if I don't get way upstream of that chain, that's where you affect change on that output or the inputs. And
right.
And yeah, that the cow and genetics super important, but you just have to have the right inputs no matter what you're doing. Now, one little secret where I am, I've got a neighbor. He's a wonderful man, Jeff, and on the farm we live on, the gentleman who had it before gave away a few acres of land for a church. So it was a church on the farm. So Jeff and I always joke that he's got the grazing rights, depending on how the fences are, from the church down the road, and I've got the grazing rights on the road from the church up the road. So there's right there is the ditches.
Exactly. Yeah. That's great. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about marketing. You did say, hey, you're sending your calves to Joplin.
Correct.
You were able to try a few more places, but your numbers don't really allow that too much now. But how's your marketing changed? Are you doing any direct to consumer in there? And I know those are maybe two different questions, but they may be combined.
Yeah, they're a little bit combined. I used to do a fair amount of direct to consumer, and I really did it custom where it was I had every year you pick up one or two. I mean, it wasn't a strategy; it just happened that I worked in industries where it was like, wait, you raise cows? I thought cows were they lived in the back of the grocery store. They just
right. They got on that styrofoam platter
Yeah.
themselves.
Can I buy one? Can I, whatever. And so I worked in the pretty good business, but it was all custom. It was literally, what do you want? Do you want grass fed? Do you want grain? Do you want grass finished, grain finished? Do you want no antibiotic? Do you care? What do you, it was literally, what do you want? And then I would pick one out and grow. Then that individual animal will be tagged to that person. And I never did one where it was like, sometimes I'd have one that it's like, hey, somebody call and it's like, all right, I've got one. Here's what I've got. Do you want it? That's kind of ready or almost ready. But really, my thing was I want to be customer to the individual. So I still do a few of those each year. Actually, this last year was the first time I ever had to call someone. They called me and said, hey, we hear you do a little bit of this. Yeah, I do a little bit of it. Can we buy one? Yeah, you can buy one. And I said, I've got one I think I'm really going to like. It's going to finish out well, but it's going to take some time. It's just not, and so they ended up waiting a few months and I had to call them. I said, here's the thing. And I really didn't know the family. I'm like, I can't sell this animal to you. It just didn't, I wanted it to. And so tell people bad things about me. That's fine. I don't live up to commitments. That's fine. Whatever. I can't in good conscience haul this thing in for you. And so there's a disadvantage, but I still do like just 2, 3, 4 a year for people that have been long-term. I don't actively market that. And really right now, rewind the clock 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I wanted all of them to go through custom. And none of them to go through custom because you can't charge, you just feel so guilty charging someone what you can get out of the sale barn. It's like, you feel like you're robbing someone, but that's what they're worth. And so I still do a few. I did last year. So in my career, I was in advertising for a while. Then I ran marketing for a group of outdoor brands. And so if you're chief market officer for a company, Banded Holdings. So if you're a duck hunter or goose hunter, Banded gear and Avery and Greenhead gear, all that, I ran marketing for them when they were coming of age, I suppose you'd say. And then had a software startup. And this last year, that I took a load of calves to Joplin. And I really like Mark and the guys up there. They're just amazing. But I'm sitting in the parking lot after I dumped them off, and I thought, every time I look at my check stub, I wonder which of my friends is going to send me their stub the next week, and they're going to have a better price. I thought, and I always ask myself the same two questions. Should I have sold them this week, and should I have sold them here? And I thought, I've got a software, but surely I could fit this. So I built myself a little forecasting app for all livestock markets that report to the USDA. It is amazing. And so today it is, it's just pretty unbelievable, spot on for being able to forecast market prices. And, the reality is for where I am, I'm already making a good decision, but I don't have to sit there and pull out of the parking lot and say, was that a good decision? In most markets, it makes about a $300 per head difference from the bottom to top within a 100-mile radius. It's just unbelievable. And so that's a tangent a little bit, but it is, I do take most of mine straight to the sale barn, try to get them into the value add programs. And that's just, that really has added the bottom line for very little extra effort. And I've got the space to do it. So, that's, you have to have that.
And with the value added, I think earlier you mentioned about Joplin's programs, and Siloam Springs closer, but they all offer the same programs. Is that the value added? And how much are you finding that adds to you? If you could, it's hard to figure it out.
Well, it is, except that I've taken, a load here and the next one's there because it's closer, whatever and it's always a 5 to 20 cents a pound.
Oh yeah.
So, when you're selling 7 weights, that adds up pretty fast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It does add up quickly.
Yeah. And right now, look at the forecast. I wish I was, and where prices are, I wish I was back at 5 weights for like literally the last 2 months. That's what's been, there just isn't much point in holding on to 7 weight to grow them right now. The dollars just aren't there where and I haven't looked at the forecast in the last few weeks, but look at the sale numbers. It's just pretty clear that, well, if you, selling a little bit smaller, you're going to do better overall and, keep your thing else. So
yeah,
it's a crazy market we're in right now. Crazy market.
It is. Let's check your psychic skills. How long does this market last? If only we knew that.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting how the market today. There's the noise. Like we've watched, as an example, we watched fake screwworm news pop up. A couple months ago, and futures went crazy for like 24 hours until it's like no, that part was fake. They're still they're 50 miles away, but they're still away or whatever. And so we've seen some of these things happen, but really it would appear that, at least for the short term, this market kind of holds, except for politicians. We'll see what happens. I mean, it becomes it's a political environment as much as a supply and demand environment.
Yeah.
The political influences of supply and demand, but still yet it's moving on policy, not on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like the stock market, political figure makes a statement or does something.
That's right.
It's amazing how closely that market jumps based upon that or drops based upon it.
That's right. I'll tell you that they're even so, you and I are old enough to remember where it's like, you run those calves across, you're like 36 cents a pound. You're like, oh, that's a pretty good day right there. And so even so, like I wouldn't want to be, for me, this is not, of course, any advice or anything else, but it's like, I would hate to think that I was just going to get into cows right now. It just feels like I would hate to be saying I'm going to start now. Thankfully, I came into this market with a herd already, and what a tremendous that is. But all things being equal, I love cows, and I'm so glad I've got some. And
yes,
I have cows, and I'm thinking about orchard grass and clover and all those things until the day I die. It's such a great way of life. I love it.
Yeah, I completely concur.
I hope I get better at it too. I hope we get better at.
Oh, I hope we do. Sadly, my dad and I say that to each other all the time. Maybe one of these days we'll have it figured out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Gabe, it is time we switch gears just a little bit. It's time for our famous 4 questions.
All right.
Same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our first question, what is your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit different direction. And my favorite resource in total right now, or just for years, has been feed store. I'll sit at the feed store.
Oh, yeah.
Ask these guys. So I really have 2 right now that I leverage from an information perspective a lot. So I've read so many great books on just animal husbandry and et cetera, but there's nothing like sitting in a feed store and being able to ask these guys to come in and say, okay, Carmen, you've been doing this for 60 years. I know you. Last 2 summers ago, I had a really weird health issue at my parents' house with some of my cows, and the vet was like, I've not seen this before. And so on a Saturday morning, I go to early, and my wife said, where are you? I said, I'm going to the feed store. I'm going to figure it out. And I sit down there. I'm like, all right, guys, here's symptoms. And I won't have a somewhat of an opinion, but you start to pull these things together. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this may be what's happening. And so the feed store. And then the second thing is right now, it is so easy with AI to aggregate information. In university research, we have such a tremendous benefit in this country. And you can go to ChatGPT and say, pull university research on grazing practices in a drought, and best management practices in drought, or grasses in my environment, anything, and it will go and pull from these research papers. And I do that quite a bit with different aspects.
Oh yeah.
University research, because it's so good. It's so good. And so I do a lot of that. So it's not exactly a book, but those are my 2 primary sources of education right now.
Yeah. What AI gives to us, granted, you can't just take it all just at face value, but it just gives you access to go through a lot of information. And that feed store, whether it's the feed store, the coffee shop, or online, the networking is always so important. And this is, Gabe, this is my biggest weakness, is I don't I'm not proactive about asking others questions.
Yeah.
And that's really a trait or characteristics I see in others that I wish I was better at, because in my mind, I'm like, I hear something, I'm like, okay, I got it figured out. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Some people are more prone to, wait, I got more questions. I have those questions at 2 a.m. So I really like having those people that are better at that. And I'm trying to improve myself there.
You know, you say that, and here you're on episode like number 200 or whatever. Nothing but questions.
I actually, if we want to talk about that, my ability to ask decent questions, I'm not even going to pretend like they're good yet, but to ask decent questions has improved so much as a result of interviewing over 200 producers and finding out about their operation. And the great thing is, I find that transferred into my life as I'm talking to people and asking questions about them. I am such a better question maker.
Yeah.
Our second, go ahead, Gabe.
On the question front, I think everybody has to get over. No, it's not necessarily what you're talking about, but I had to get over the fear of not knowing already before I started out. You know, the fear of someone saying, "Well, this guy doesn't know anything." And then one time, probably a teenager, and I'd been deer hunting for years, and took somebody that from that was visiting from out of state, and they deer hunted. And anyway, I shot a deer and had this idea, and I said, "Hey, you know, so and so, I've sure field dressed a few of these, but it's been a while, and I'm trying to remember exactly how to do it. Do you mind showing me how to field dress this deer real fast?" And you know, he did it, and I thought that was the best idea I've ever had, to not have to actually get my hands dirty.
Oh, yeah.
And I've used that I don't know how many times since then. I thought I didn't think it'd work. I was telling him that, I'm like, there's no way he's gonna do that for me. But I didn't want to take my warm clothes off, and so from there I was like, well, I don't care if people think I'm dumb.
That is a pro tip right there.
That's right.
Excellent. Gabe, our second question is, what's your favorite tool for the farm?
Yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. So I developed this forecasting piece, but I was sitting at my desk, and I'll try to make this really fast. I will make it really fast. I sit at my desk, and my big pain point is cattle records. I hate entering records. Grazing records, movement records, which cow had this calf, treatment records, all that. And I was sitting at my desk, and I had multiple notebooks and a clipboard and entering records. I thought, this is crazy. So I developed an app. It's Herd Advisor, and it is just all voicing. So I have near perfect records today, just by saying, I don't have to turn my phone on or anything. I carry my phone in my pocket. I just say, "Hey Siri, cow number 2 had a calf. It was born yesterday. It was a bull. We castrated it. We gave it multi-min," or whatever, and it goes through AI agents to say, what kind of record is this? But that's by far my favorite tool, because you can't manage your bottom line if you don't know what's going into it. And we all know that. And if you don't have records, my memory is not perfect. And I've got a cow. I was looking at her yesterday, and I'm like, I know you're the one I always tell a story about of, she fall calver, didn't have a calf. I'll roll her in the spring. And then the next year, like, is that the one I rolled last year? I'll try to look it up. Can't find the record. And it always comes down to, do the kids like feeding her range cubes? That's a terrible way to manage your farm.
Yeah.
So by far my favorite tool right now is the Herd Advisor app, because I actually keep records, and I keep great records now.
You know, I was just on a couple podcasts back talking to Tom Kravitz and talking about your grazing chart, and whether you're using that to guide decisions or just as a record keeping. But part of it, the record keeping, you've got to kind of know what you're doing. And I said, I'm great at it because I keep it in my head. I'm bad at when I go to it to write it down. I'm like, I was sure I moved them this day, but when I look at the calendar and it doesn't quite match up. In fact, I just had a conversation with a past guest along that line. He was laughing about that statement on it, and he tells me, I went to record mine today thinking it's just been a couple of days, and he says, I looked at it and it had been 7 days. I was like, where'd those cows go? I don't know what I did. So having the ability to do something quickly right then without typing it in, etc., I think could be really valuable.
It's been amazing for me. It has been, honestly, I mean, I don't want to but it's been game changing for me because
Yeah.
it is 100%. I enter the record because it doesn't cost me anything. And one of my favorite things in life is get up in the morning, get on a horse and just go sit in the cows and just watch them graze for a little bit, see what's happening. And I'm always like, I'll say, well, is that one limping? I need to check on it in a couple of days, that kind of thing. Well, in the past I had to pull my phone out of my pocket and type it in or whatever and text it to myself or something. Now I just, hey Siri, set a reminder in 2 days to check number 7, make sure you may have a limp or whatever. And it's been a game changer for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
I think I'd have to go back to run your race. Pay attention to the bottom line and run your race. Ask advice from the people who've been doing it for a while. When you say, hey, I've got, I just bought X number of acres. I've got a great deal on a few potloads of, ask for some advice, run your race and keep it to the bottom line. When I got started, I just was running for looks and losing money. And I think they're great looking cows, great looking animals. But that's now I can enjoy that instead of saying, I can't believe I spent that on that. And so I think it's just run your race, get input, ask questions, sit at the feed store, and then put everything in terms of like, what's this going to do to my bottom line?
Yeah. Excellent advice. And Gabe, lastly, where can others find out more about you?
Yeah. A couple places. I hate social media. So I'm quasi on LinkedIn, Gabe Wight, WIGHT on LinkedIn. I do check that at least every unfortunate month. And then, herdvisor.com is a great place to go. And I'm super up to speed on contact emails. And then, my phone number is there. And that's what I enjoy doing. I get to talk to producers every day. Like I love it. I love it.
Oh,
I love it. What's your program? What's going on? Amazing. Do you have turkeys on your place?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's just, but herdadvisor.com and any of those contacts is just it. I see all of them and I try to respond to all that I can. Cause it's such a benefit to get to talk to people that are like-minded and doing what we're doing.
Oh, perfect.
So
Gabe, thank you for coming on and sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
I like what Gabe's doing with the Herd Advisor app, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you for listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, and be sure to check out the show notes for links and resources mentioned in today's conversation with Gabe. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who's interested in regenerative grazing, cattle profitability, or improving their grazing management. Before we wrap up, if you're trying to figure out grazing on your place, wrestling with your next move, or wanting to avoid an expensive mistake, I'd love to help. My Over the Fence call is a simple 30-minute one-on-one conversation where we talk through your situation, your goals, and what I'd do if I were in your boots. No fluff, no big program, just some help. You can book your call today on the grazinggrass.com website. And thank you for listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, where grass farmers learn from grass farmers. More grass, better soil, happier livestock. Keep on grazing, and I'll see you next episode.